Good afternoon, everybody, and happy holidays or happiest of holidays to come. I think, but Christmas is next week, I think, something like that. So, in some ways, we might have some presents under the trees for you in Texas. So, thanks for joining us at All Things Energy and Exergy Energy. This is a follow up discussion interview on the Texas Backup Power Program. And joining me today is Randall Rapier, Head Director of Consulting at Exergy Energy, and who has been, I was going to say knee deep, but it could be ears deep in all things Texas Backup Power Package. I know that you've talked to the people writing the regulations and things like that. Today's talk is literally to get into some depth and detail on the financials. What does a project really look like? What's it really going to cost? Will this grant cover everything? We're going to try and be very, very candid with you. That being said, the rules and regs haven't literally been completely finalized yet. So a lot of this is based on estimates that Exergy has done from our experience in doing backup power projects and things in Texas as well. So let's start off, Randall, with a little bit of a historical view here. Tell us about the Texas Backup Power Package for those people that may have missed 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, 2 weeks ago's video. What is the Texas Backup Power Package? It's a little hard thing to say at one point.
Yes. Thanks for having me on again, Dave. So just real quick for everybody that, is new to this topic. As a result of Winter Storm Uri, which we're all painfully aware of the impact that had on the power in the state of Texas, there was a bill that was passed that allocated several $billions to try to address some of the concerns. They went out and they weatherized a lot of the utility components that caused part of the problems. There was a fund set aside that was specifically towards the large energy producers to get them to put more energy on the grid. But what we're talking about today is a component of the Texas Energy Fund that was brought about by that bill passing, where they allocated $1.8 billion that was earmarked for putting backup power into critical companies within the state of Texas. So when they say critical companies, the criteria is, so think about nursing homes, hospitals, fire and police, warming centers. Think about the locations within your town that if the power went out, this has to stay up and running for the community members to be safe. So that's how they kind of classify critical companies.
Okay, let me interject there for a second. So that sounds like there are some things that are kind of like black and white default. Yeah, this is definitely a critical facility. So a nursing home, a hospital, yeah, totally get it. Fire station, police station, totally get it. Water treatment, water facilities, totally get it. But then there's ones like grocery stores and I'll call it gas stations or fueling centers that when I read the regs, it sounds like it could be maybe, maybe not, depending upon how many there are, where they're located, are they on evacuation routes? So it sounds a little dynamic to me, Randall.
Yeah, and that's one of the important parts of this. So this grant it's a limited budget. So right now there's $1.8 billion earmarked towards it. There's going to be a day when they open up a portal to have grant requests put in, and then part of the challenge for the customers is to qualify for the grant. You have to do a good job of basically telling your story. Is why should you be considered a critical facility within your community? So in some areas, a gas station might not be considered a critical facility because there might be 20 of them in the local community. In other areas where we are the gas station that is on the exit routes for 4 towns to try to leave the area if something happened, that could be classified as a critical facility. So yeah, there is some some strategy involved when a company goes to submit an application for a grant. If you're not in one of the cookie cutters, it would do you a good service to have somebody help you, build a case for why you should be considered a critical company, in your community.
Okay, so this is for backup power, right?
Yep.
Help me understand kind of sort of what that means. I mean, when somebody says to me backup power, I think, yeah, I got a diesel backup generator. Is that what they were talking about here or not?
Yeah, so when you say backup power, there's a lot that can go into that, and it's one of those things you really have to define. And again, the rules haven't been finalized yet. We've seen an original draft of rules, and then they've asked for, from communication from companies like ours who live with this every day to help, boil those down. But when we talk about backup power, we look at three different things. There's critical loads. You might think a factory that has a boiler that has to be backed up. Otherwise, if it lost power, it could freeze and there'd be problems. But they don't really care if the rest of the facility goes down. Think life safety. So things that are mandated by law that you have to have backup power for. So a hospital might have a 1 megawatt load, but they might only have to have life safety backup for a small portion of that, say 25%. What we're talking about is full facility, so that you can run what they call islanded. So if the
When you
grid
say
goes down,
we're talking about, you
in
mean
the
what
grant,
this program is about? Like,
correct.
Okay, so full facility. Like if it was a nursing home, it's not just the skilled nursing intervention, life safety stuff. Because if you're down, then the cafeteria doesn't work, the air conditioning doesn't work, the heat doesn't work, that type of thing. So this is full facility.
Correct. And if you
Okay.
think about it, it makes sense from where this bill originated was, the results of, Superstorm Uri, where you would have had a facility potentially that had life safety generator, but then HVAC didn't work. They weren't able to heat the
Mhm.
rooms. And, we all saw the well publicized, unfortunately, there were fatalities due to that. So that's the spirit of this, is to put full facility backup power so that if the grid goes down, your facility can keep running. And then we
Okay.
know there are some places in the community that that can be kept up and
Okay.
running.
So I'm going to hit you a lot of questions here. So I'll call it the technical solution, is that completely up to, I'll call it the customer, or are they prescribing something that it's got to fit with?
Yeah, so they're prescribing what they see as backup power. So the original rules that came out, we've been interpreting them, and the whole market is trying to get ahead of this. So
I
we're
know that
prepared.
we've submitted, comments and
Yeah,
back to
yeah,
the
some
committee.
suggestions on how to really
Yeah.
tighten this up and make it to where you're really accomplishing what you're trying to do. But yeah, there will be some prescribed rules that when to qualify for this grant opportunity, which is a significant amount of money towards the
Mhm.
backup power, that the backup power will need to look like this. And that is some of the things that's being boiled down. So what we see so far, and again, this is subject to change, is that we're looking at a microgrid that can be freestanding. And when we say microgrid, that's a term that if you looked up in Wikipedia, looked up microgrid, you'd see 20 different definitions. But
Yeah.
the assumption is that there'll be some version of a natural gas or propane backup generator that can support the full load of the facility, and
Mhm.
then a combination of solar and battery as well to form a true microgrid. And again, that we're not sure yet on the rules of we know the generator needs to match the full load of the facility. But
Mhm.
what we don't know is, does the battery have to match the full load of the facility as well? And that would drive costs up. Or can it be a smaller battery that would have certain functions within that microgrid? But the way
Okay,
it's
so if
written
I
today,
can
it's a
step back for this for a second. So prescription wise, it's got to be a microgrid.
Mhm.
And again, that definition of microgrid is multiple modalities of energy generation and management. It has to be able to be both islanded, meaning work outside of the grid, but by definition, a microgrid also is, I'm going to say, connected and integrated with the grid as well. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
So a couple of questions on there. Is there any limitation on sizes?
So yes, the maximum size of the solution, it has a maximum of 2.5 megawatts. So it has a particular focus, the product solution does, and it has to be 2.5 as a total package. So I can't have a 10 megawatt backup power system and then get grant coverage for only a portion of it, that 2.5 megawatts. It has to be, the way the rules are in today is the system itself, the entire system has to be 2.5 megawatts or under in order to qualify for the grant.
Let me ask the tricky question on that one. Let's take your 10 megawatts. And I go, okay, that's fine. I'm going to put 4 2.5 megawatt systems in. Can I get a grant for all of that? AKA a grant for each of the 2.5, or they look at it as a total load and says the total load is what essentially determines the grant.
That's one of those fuzzy areas.
Okay.
But looking at the spirit of the bill, from my expertise, I would say it's going to end up being, it's a 2.5 for that facility, as opposed to having multiples, because then you kind of violate the spirit of it. But yeah, the letter of the law hasn't been written out yet. But the assumption is it's going to be, no, it has to be 2.5 for this facility.
Okay, one of the tricky things in Texas when we get into backup power, especially for healthcare and things like that, is this on-site fuel storage requirement.
Yeah.
So we see, especially in life safety where it is mandated in Texas, we see diesel generators strictly because that's the only thing they can do, because it requires 48 hours of on-site fuel storage. What are they supposed to do here? I mean, if it's natural gas, or do I have to have, compressed natural gas storage tanks, or what's the rule around this?
So that's another area that we've asked for clarification on. Now, you look at a couple things. So, for example, today we have hospital customers that they have life safety requirements, and then they have full facility needs. And they're two different things. In that scenario, we've got a combination on site where we'll have a diesel generator with on-site fuel storage that'll supply the requirement for life safety backup power. In addition to that, we'll have a natural gas full facility that covers the full facility. So we'll have both of those systems in place at the same location to meet the requirements that they have for life safety backup power, that's segmented off in sub 10-second start with fuel storage on site for a certain number of days. And then we also have a full facility natural gas generator that covers the full facility. So the thought would be that this would be strictly pointed at, we're providing full facility backup power, not really factoring in
Okay, but it does address the biggest problem in that instance with a diesel life safety backup, is if everything goes to crap, and the roads are not passable and everything else, and I can't get my diesel delivery, right? The nice thing is the diesel is there, it's compliant and everything else. It comes up within 10 seconds. It meets all the regulations for critical facility segregations and everything else. But then when the full facility backup comes up, the diesel sees that and says, oh, okay, I can go back offline and turn off. So assuming that there's no interruption of natural gas, it gives you almost an infinite fuel storage of diesel that you didn't kind of expect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, your 48 hours or your 72 hours worth of on-site fuel.
Considering natural gas is 99.5% reliable. All right, but now you said it's full facility and it's their peak demand. So you'd never size a generator to the size of the peak demand because of things like inrush current, reactive power, and things like that. So if I have a peak demand, I'm just going to make numbers up here for a second, of 400 kilowatts, prudence would say I need to put probably a 500 kilowatt generator in there in order to be able to load, follow, and do all those. Does the Texas Backup Power Package size my grant on my 400 peak load or my 500 kW generator?
The expectation is on the generator that matches the load. But yeah, that'll have to be clarified because it's not super specific. And again, that is one of those things that not enough attention is placed on, because we'll run into opportunities where somebody's looking at a backup generator when we first start talking to them, and they're like, yes, they told us we need a 2.5 megawatt generator. And then we start digging in and we look and they've got a 500 kW load.
Yeah.
And when the facility was originally built, it was built for huge capacity. It never ended up needing that. So yeah, really dialing it in and making sure that you've got the right generator for your load will give you a much better opportunity of being successful when it comes time to write.
Okay, so they're going to check that. They're going to say you don't want to put. They're not allowing us to put a much larger generator compared to their peak load, but it will be sized reasonably on
appropriately to the facility.
All right. So this interview is about financials. What do they mean, the incentives and stuff like that? So let's get into it. So first question is, what are they talking about grant-wise here? How large is the grant?
So the grant opportunity is $500 per kW. So,
okay.
When we look at that, from a market perspective, is how much of the cost of this project is this grant going to cover? Because that's really it doesn't make it affordable for the customer that it wasn't quite affordable for before. And as we're going to go,
wait a second, got to jump in there because maybe you're foreshadowing. Does it make it more affordable? I sort of interpret that as to mean it ain't going to cover the whole cost.
Absolutely not. Okay. It's not going to cover the whole cost. And you think about, like, when we talk to people, they're surprised that every nursing home doesn't have a generator, full facility generator today.
Yep.
If you ask the average layman, do you think a nursing home has a generator? And they say, oh, for sure, absolutely. And the reason they don't is just they don't have the revenue for it. Otherwise, every nursing home that I talk to, they're like, absolutely, we'd love to have one. We just can't, we don't have the revenue for it. So this grant was designed to, impact the financials enough to where it's not going to be free, but it would now make it to where, you can make a really good case that your average nursing home, your average, critical company could see the value in and act upon it and get backup power.
I mean, one of the reasons for this interview is when somebody hears like, oh, you get a grant, it's like 500. They can't really compare that to what does a project cost? What, if I wanted a backup generator, what would it cost and things like that? So I think you're bringing us from our experience in putting in backup generators in Texas, in nursing homes and other healthcare facilities. What do the economics really look like?
Yeah, and I've got a nice little spreadsheet here. I'm going to share my screen.
I hope it's not one of those micro fonts or something,
Super eye chart.
Yeah.
Let me share my screen, and then this visual should help us out here. Let me know when you can see that.
It's up for me, and okay. I have my glasses on. I can see it. Hopefully, everybody in the audience can as well.
Perfect. Okay. So what we've done here, Dave, is broke down let's say it's a good sized nursing home. So we're talking a pretty large facility, but this would give you a good idea. Small town, police department that has, the small jail system in it. 500 kW load is kind of typical for what we see. So if I look at it, what we've built out here is the cost model for the 500 kW natural gas genset and the switchgear that comes with it. What it would cost to manage and maintain it. And then we've added in the cost, and I'll run through this all. We've added in the cost of the microgrid at 100 kW. So not full. And this is one of those, the caveats we want to throw out there is we don't have the final rules on the sizing of the solar and battery portion of it. How big does that have to be? If I've got a 500 kW load and a 500 kW generator, what size battery do I need to qualify for the grant? So those rules are still
okay. So those rules are not finalized yet.
Correct.
So why did you pick the sizes and numbers that you got here?
Yeah. So what we see is, when I have a 500 kW load to back up the entire facility, if I was to put in a 500 kW battery to run the entire facility as well, now I've just blown the economics, and it doesn't. And this is 100 kW is going to give us a lot of coverage.
If I look at it ratiometrically, like 100 kilowatts of battery versus 500 kilowatts of generator, I think that's what the engineering company that was tasked by the committee to provide the recommendations. I think this is what they've been using kind of in their examples. So
and it's the expectation that you're going to be, you're going to be backing up, several functions of that building with the battery is just a fail safe on top of the generator, but not the full thing. And that's the guesstimate we're hoping to come out with.
Okay, so the top of this is the cost of a generator. So I mean, if I was a nursing home and I said I want to put in backup generator, a natural gas backup generator, this is kind of what that would cost standalone. So if we're trying to look at it from the perspective of motivating or incentivizing, is that right? So it's going to cost you somewhere between $1 and $1.20 a watt.
Correct.
Yeah. Gas generator installed.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so if I was just to do that, here's how that numbers would look. It's just under $580,000 turnkey. That's, everything's handled for you and it gets installed. You're up and running.
That's a turnkey cost. No headaches.
Yep.
AKA, if we were doing it, we would take care of everything and got it. Okay.
Yeah, you're not GCing it. You're not allocating 4 of your staff for the next year to try to get this done. It's like you focus on what you do, we take care of it. So this is full turnkey for the generator. And then now look at the impact of adding 100 kW of battery. So the full facility generator, $580,000 roughly, or the $1.16 per watt. And then the microgrid, you're looking at an additional just over $206,000 for the 100 kW.
So that is solar
with battery.
Solar with battery.
Yep, battery storage.
So that on a cost per watt went from $1.16 to $8.26 to make it a microgrid. Okay, got it.
Yeah, yep. And then it has some impact though. So you look and you say, well, that $206,000 makes it, now it's not worth it. Well, look what it does to the total cost, because really that's what's important is the total cost. Mm-hmm. So if we did a turnkey microgrid, that means we had the cost of the generator, its installation, everything included. We had the cost of the solar and the battery. We lumped those together. Now we're at $784,000, but now I qualify for that 500 per kW grant. Mm-hmm. And when I add the 500 kW of the generator, and then I add the 100 kW of the battery capacity as well, I'm at 600 kW. I get $500 for every one of them. I'm at $300,000 on just the grant from the Texas Backup Power Package.
Got it. Okay.
So that's a big impact. My additional cost to add the solar and battery was just over $200,000, but I got $300,000 back. That's a good deal, any way you spend it. And then on top of that, one of the things that we'll do for our clients is we research and we're able to get investment tax credits. So since it's a microgrid, the estimation on the investment tax credit number is another $145,000. So now
let me stop you there. So I know in the top of my head it says it right there. The investment tax credit is 30%, right? Mm-hmm. So if I say 30% of that top number, 784, that's a lot more than 145. Why is the ITC 145?
Yeah, so the investment tax credit, it's a percentage base, and there's still some sausage to be made on how the impact of the investment tax credit is going into this next year. Some of those things are getting finalized yet.
Well, I think the biggest piece is under the rules. This is the IRA section 48, I guess it is. E. The generator doesn't comply with the ITC. Only the microgrid stuff.
The microgrid portion of it.
Yeah. Okay. And the solar and things like that. Okay. I totally get it. And then you got to deduct the grant as well, some portion of the grant. Okay.
Yeah, and what we're looking at, like at the end of the day, your total cost net of the grant, the ITC, you've brought that down to $340,000 or 57 cents per watt.
Okay, so the generator alone, which is 580,000, rounding it around, $1.20 a watt or so, that would be sufficient for me to have backup, meaning I could run forever off grid and backup. But with the grant and the microgrid, I can get full facility backup that can run literally forever, as if I had just purchased just the backup generator, for literally almost 220,000 less.
Less.
We're going from $1.16 to 57 cents a watt. That sounds like a pretty good deal.
And if this is the way the rulings come out as far as size of battery and everything, then they're going to accomplish what the goal was, and that was to make this affordable enough so that these critical companies can now justify it.
Okay, so let me ask that question as well. First thing that people think of when people hear of a grant or something like that is, ooh, I'm going to get a free backup system. You're getting a heck of a deal looking at these numbers, but it ain't free, right? So do they allow financing? Exergy is an energy as a service company, meaning we put in backup generators at no capex for our customers and things like that. This might be a sufficient incentive for, let's say, a smaller nursing home to go it on their own. But if they go and they go, yeah, I still can't, and I'm just making, I can't afford $340,000. Okay. Do they have any options? What's available to them?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's requested clarification on what the ownership structure looks like, because it was something that wasn't really clarified in the first set of rules. Mm-hmm. So we're actually reached out directly because of what we do and our kind of reputation in the market. So that's a point of clarification: is are they going to allow organizations that are managed service providers, so that do resiliency as a service, to be the owner of the backup power and then deliver managed backup power to the end customer? And in that case, you'd be providing financing. And that's going to be clarified. All the indications are that's absolutely going to be possible. So in addition to, hopefully this made it, attractive enough for a portion of the market to now pull the trigger, put backup power in, there's a large swath of the market that still wouldn't be able to provide it and needs those partners, that do provide the financing and do it turnkey and deliver it as a service, so that they're not required to put up anything up front, and they just, they're able to do a smaller managed monthly service fee. And we've kind of got this broken out for you.
That one's an eye chart.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So let's take a look over here on the right. This is my typical customer that I interact with. They come to us and they say, we don't have the CapEx budget. We don't have, the expertise, nor do we have the desire to own backup power. We just want backup power. So we do it as a turnkey solution where we install it, we own it, we manage it, we maintain it. And we're typically involved in a 10-year agreement. So if you see that first line to the top right there, that's our resiliency as a service agreement. Typically it's 10 years. So when I take, I break out those numbers and I build them out, and I come up with that managed service payment on an annual basis for our customers. So instead of outlaying cash up front, and financing themselves and owning it, managing it, maintaining it, doing all of that on their own, their annual payment to us would be just over $89,000 a year, broken out into monthly payments for 10 years. And then we bring back market revenue to them as well. So that asset that's sitting there idle, there's some limitations on how you can participate or what you can participate in, and that's going to be clarified again. This number could go up dramatically. The $18,000 of market revenue, it could go away. Depends on how they write that revenue, but we're looking at an annual payment of $71,000.
Okay, so I'm looking at those numbers, and then also, the old saying, "There's no free lunch." First of all, the grant's not going to cover everything, so there's going to be some out of pocket. You could do the out of pocket yourself. CapEx wise, you could do it as a managed service. My first question is, has the Texas Energy Fund discussed providing loans directly to facilities?
There is the potential of providing loans, and that hasn't been clarified. So there's the one number that has been bandied about of the $1.8 billion. So
Mhm.
when the grant window opens and people are applying for grants, the priority wise, from what we see, is going to be grant money that helps you make your deal, and kind of off you go. That would be given priority. Then it's grants with additional loans for the installation and the operations of the equipment and things along those lines, where there could potentially be a chunk of money that's allocated for that as well. But
Okay,
then you
but what I
cost.
what I hear in that is it's been mentioned, but there's not any real
Yeah, no
there's no
clarification
depth
on.
or it's like, yeah, it'd be nice, maybe it'll happen, but you at this point necessarily couldn't count on the loan being
Correct.
available.
Correct.
Okay, I
And
also noticed, so staying with my there's no free lunch. Grants typically have strings attached to them. So one of the things that came to mind when I'm looking at these numbers here, it says, oh, O&M, yeah, I mean, I still have to pay service and maintenance on this, et cetera, et cetera. Um, am I just free to do whatever I want to? I mean, you give me the money, I get my microgrid, I got the money and everything else. Do I ever hear from you again? Do I have any obligations to, I call it the Texas Energy Fund, reporting, maintenance prescriptions? What do we know?
yeah, and there will be required. They haven't been specified as far as what they are yet, but there will be reporting requirements. If you're a grant recipient and you do install backup power, there will be reporting requirements on performance, how often it's run, service and maintenance, like all of those kind of statistics. And what we're thinking is going to happen. So the organization that wrote the first set of rules, for a lot of the market information and justification behind the way the rules were set, they
Mm-hmm.
used a database called Energy Star, which is
uh, Portfolio Manager Energy Star. Yeah, we roll that out for our customers as well.
yeah, and that it does a really good job of reporting a lot of data that's in place on the equipment, and how it's used, greenhouse gas emission. I mean, there's a lot of reporting functionality, and we believe in it enough to where we've integrated it within our customer portals,
Yeah.
so that they've got access to that data. But that reporting will be a requirement. So all of
So
those things
do you
really
think
have to
this?
be factored in.
So when I get into things like NFP 110, life safety systems, and things like that, I literally have maintenance requirements, maintenance reports that have to be filed, and things like this. Considering, again, it's a grant and it's to these critical facilities, my guess is similar type of very prescriptive maintenance and reporting requirements and things are going to be required. And that'll just be an added burden for the smaller organizations, I'd assume.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is
Whereas
a
if you did it as a managed service, that headache's kind of off your plate, right?
yeah. When you look at when you talk to the average customer, that's the reason that they leverage managed services for so many things within their organization, because
Yeah.
they've got a mission and they want to stay tight on that. All of this other stuff, it's not something we want to do. And in this particular area, they just want backup power. The market just wants backup power. They don't want to handle reporting. They want to handle installing a major project. They,
Yeah.
they would rather have just somebody else deal with that.
All right, let's do. We're kind of going to try and keep this short. Let's do a quick review. So make sure that I've got it. The Texas Backup Power Package for critical facilities. You can go to their website and they'll list those, but healthcare facilities, nursing homes, hospital, emergency centers, emergency services, first responders, all that, maybe grocery stores and things depending upon your evacuation routes. It needs to be 2.5 megawatts or less on the
Correct.
load. It needs to be a microgrid, which includes both a microgrid controller, which allows both islanding and communication and integration with the grid, solar, battery, and then a natural gas backup generator
Or propane.
or propane. Sorry,
Yeah.
the generator itself is at must be able to handle the peak load of the facility. The grant is $500 per kilowatt, and that is kilowatts of installed battery and installed generator. Okay, I think I got that right. It is highly, highly unlikely that the $500 is going to cover the entire cost. So you are looking at some out of pocket, but in general, it's a heck of a good deal.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, if you look at it on average, we went from literally the cost of backup power, it cuts it in half, right? From $1.16 a watt to whatever it was, 57 cents or something.
Yeah. In the most restrictive way that we could see the rules coming out, it's a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on some of those variables, I mean, there may be more opportunities to leverage that backup power for a customer to do things like lower the cost of their existing energy spend. There are ways that we do that for customers all the time, where we've got that idle backup power that's just sitting there 99% of the time. We'll leverage it to both save money on their existing energy spend, and then also to generate some pretty significant revenue.
So depending upon how flexible the final rules come out, I'll go to the 57 cents that could get driven down maybe substantially, depending upon what programs and things are allowed.
Yeah, the good deal could become a great deal.
Okay. There are recording requirements. There are service and maintenance requirements on how the service is performed, what is serviced, how frequently it's done, and things like that. All of that has to be reported. So again, there's administrative overhead costs that will be borne by the customer or the grantee that aren't necessarily in those numbers at this point, unless you do it as a managed service. It is a $1.8 billion fund, but it is tapped. That's it. It's $1.8 billion. And it's a limited, and it's a first come, first serve. Is that right?
Yeah, and we've run into this in other markets. Specifically, I'm thinking of California, where they put some pretty, decent incentives out there for customers to start adopting backup power. And then the challenge was that they were oversubscribed, where they had a budget, it was tapped out quickly, and then a lot of customers were kind of left in the lurch. And our recommendation is make sure that you're partnering with somebody you feel really comfortable with, that the equipment that they're using has been certified for this application, that the person who's managing your application is communicating with the people who are running the grant, so that you've got a really good shot at that when you put your application in, that you are
anytime there's a grant, there's going to be people coming out of the woodwork that who are never in this market is now in this market for you. You're solar developers. I mean, I'm not picking fights with anybody, but because it is a first come, first serve and limited, you want to make sure that if you're working with somebody, you're working with somebody who's going to deliver for you.
Absolutely.
On that. A couple of things. The first one is, again, I put myself in the seat of a nursing home administrator. I don't watch the PUC, the Texas Energy Van. I don't visit them. I barely look at my electricity bills and things like that. Are they going to notify me? Do they know that I'm a critical facility, or how do I? I'm worried about missing this, right?
And that's a legitimate.
Sounds like a really good deal.
Yeah, it's a legitimate concern. It's the expectation is that the Public Utility Commission is going to be actively reaching out to critical companies, but again, that's not a science, and the chance of you being missed by that communication is decent. So what we're doing is we're proactively reaching out to critical companies, and we're letting them know about the grant opportunity, and then we're gathering all the relevant data so that from what we already know is going to be required, that we can be ready when that grant window opens up. And we build these solutions all the time. So we've got a real good process for how to build out a grant request. So that's what we're doing is
And
we're
so,
practicing.
right?
Correct. Yeah,
Why,
absolutely.
why it should be
Yeah.
me, right?
Yeah, it's getting out there and because we watch the information all the time and we're
So how
part of
does
the
this
process.
work? So you're actively going out. So are you going to take responsibility for getting the submission done and gathering the data from the customer, making sure that it's right, making sure everything is compliant, and submitting it for the customer to make sure that it's done right? And as soon as that portal opens, it's there. What are you charging for that? How much does that
So
cost?
so we don't charge for that. So we do the information gathering, we build the grant requests, and we get everything in place for the customer, and
Mhm.
then we'll submit, those grant applications as soon as that portal opens. And then if the grant is awarded and the customer, receives that notification, then it's time for them to sit down and choose a vendor, that they want to
Are they
manage that
obligated to
process.
choose you?
No, no,
No.
absolutely not.
So why are
Um,
you doing this?
well, there's a couple reasons. One, my son and two grandchildren live in Texas, so it's the right thing to do. And
Okay.
and you just know as a business, if you do the right thing, things have a way of working out for you, and you develop that relationship. Plus, we know this market. We really
It's a
know the
community
market.
service kind of thing, right?
Correct. Yeah, and we want to see this be successful, and because as these backup power facilities get spread throughout the state of Texas, that's going to strengthen our grid, and everybody in this market
Mhm.
benefits from a grid that's stronger.
If I run some real quick and dirty numbers in my head, um, in the example we gave, so the max is 2.5 megawatts. Our example was 500K, right?
Mhm. Yep.
So we're sort of in the middle there. There was 300,000 in grants. There's 1.8 billion. So if I divide the 300 into 1.8 and then compare that number, that would say how many facilities could actually get the grant. That is a smaller number than the number of facilities that the Texas Energy Fund says there's out there. So
Absolutely.
that sort of communicates to me that first come, first serve is going to be super important, that you want to get it in, you want to get it right, because you don't want to put your application in and then get a kick back and have to resubmit it or something. So it sounds
Yeah.
like it's pretty essential that you do it right the first time.
Yeah, it's going to be, and you just think of, you just think about your own, your own situation. If you had $10 to give, and you had 100 people asking you for $1, you would be pretty picky on who you gave those dollars to. You'd pick the ones that looked like they had the best chance of doing what you want this money to do, and that is install a good backup power system that would be functional if and when the next
Yeah.
superstorm
But again,
hits.
you want to make sure that you get your application in right.
Yeah,
And again, it's going to be technical. Again, so I'm quite sure that for smaller customers and things like that, it'll be a struggle for them to get in, get it right. So it's good for them to partner with somebody that'll do it for free and no obligation.
but yeah, especially if there's no obligation to it.
Yeah. What I always ask this question at the end: what didn't I ask you that I should have asked you, because it's important information for the audience to know?
Yeah, so timelines. That's one question that I'll get asked. So, what are the timelines on this? And there is no definitive answer yet. The final rules were already scheduled to be released, and they're not out yet, which to me is actually a positive. That means that they're taking the time to really do the due diligence and get this right. So once that happens, then there's going to be the communication out to the market that here's the final rules, here's what it looks like, here's what you're going to need to submit your grant, and then that grant window is going to open up, and the expectation is that could be anywhere from the summertime to the fall of 2025 when the portal goes live. That means
Okay.
there's a lot of work to be done between today and tomorrow. So the question I get asked is, do I wait till the portal comes up to start building this? And the answer is no, because there is some information has to be gathered on your peak load. What would the correct power plant be, so that you have all that information ready for that grant application? Because you don't want to be waiting until then.
Yeah, because many times when I see a grant, application, I have to have a fully detailed budget and solution set up. So waiting for the portal to open up may be a bit late. So yeah, it sounds like better to start early. There's no, again, with no object, there's no risk, and the risk is not doing it soon enough and missing out on what really does look like a fantastic opportunity. Now is an opportunity to literally be able to put backup power in critical facilities that don't have it today for half the cost. It sounds like a good deal. And you can get financing or do it as a service and cut that even more.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now,
Randall, thank you so much. If somebody wanted to get in contact with you or or Exergy or is interested in this program, what should they do?
Yeah, best thing to do is go to our website at exergyenergy.com. We've got our contact information there. And then also there's some really good information about the market, about the power environment in the United States. So we've got a lot of resources there for the average customer that wants to get that. I want a little bit of a comfort level, with the power situation, but I don't want to be an expert. So yeah, there's a lot of resources there, but also you can contact us. And one of our consultants that are in the Texas market will reach out directly and help kind of walk through that process of how we can build out your grant request for you.
Great. Randall, thank you so much. And if we don't chat, you have the happiest of holidays.
You as well.
That's everybody who joined us. Again, thank you so much. And happy holidays to you as well. And have a great New Year's as well. Take care and thank you.